Metaphysical poetry in the 1600s. Metaphysical poetry was founded in the 17th century by a man named Samuel Johnson, and it soon became known as one of the earliest forms of poetry. Johnson used this term in a book as he was writing about a few English poets. The literal translation of the word metaphysical is after the physical. As a whole, the term metaphysical deals with questions that can't be explained by science, and it questions the nature of reality in a philosophical way. There is no right or wrong answer to any metaphysical question. There are a few distinct characteristics of metaphysical poetry. Highly intellectualized, strange imagery, frequent paradox, and extremely complicated thought are all classifications of this 17th century poetry. It is oftentimes filled with wit and humor, even though the poets were examining serious questions. Metaphysical poetry sought to shock the reader and wake him or her up from normal existence. John Donne was one of the most prominent poets of this time. No Man is an Island was one of his best pieces. In this poem, he writes, "No man is an island, entire of itself. Each is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is the less, as well as if a promontory were, as well as if a manor of thine own or thine friends were. Each man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind. Therefore, send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee." The title of the poem and the first two lines are brought about to say that no man suffers alone. He implies that humans thrive upon others and no man can grow in isolation. In the following sentence, lines 3 through 4, he carries his thoughts forward to reiterate that humankind is a group in itself and that there is a common theme of suffering in everyone's lives. In lines 5 through 6, Donne uses Europe to show how we are dependent of others. He implies that Europe suffers when it loses even a small part. Later on in the poem, Donne says, "Each man's death diminishes me, for I am involved in mankind." In this, there is a responsibility of one man for another that is implied. With no man existing alone, there is a community of man that shares in suffering. We are dependent on the lives of others. Perhaps the deepest meaning comes in the last lines of the poem. When Donne says, "Therefore, send not to know for whom the bell tolls, it tolls for thee," he is using a metaphor of a church bell. He is relating this phrase to death and imagines himself passing his life on to the next. This leads him to a profound metaphysical realization of questions that cannot be answered.
Sorry for the party and the switch is smooth.